I'm Charles Malet, and I have with me today David Clews of Unity News Network. David, thanks very much for joining me. Welcome to UK Column. Now, you've been under a sort of sustained attack from mainstream media for some time now, and this goes back to the violence that started in the wake, really, of the Southport killings recently. Will you just describe, I suppose, chronologically perhaps, what exactly happened and why you think it did happen?
In terms of to me or the whole caboodle?
Well, no, yes. So, sorry, good question. No, I think
I can actually start with it, and then I'll weave myself into it. So, geez, everything's a blur now, Charles. That would have been 2 weeks last Monday, if my thinking's correct on it. So today is Saturday. So Monday of this week, it was 2 weeks before that. You had the horrific murders that took place in Southport. 3 young girls brutally butchered. What you then had was on the Tuesday, Starmer went up to Southport and he got heckled. You could clearly see there was a lot of anger. You could see that things were changing. And again, this is on the back of more big events. You had the Hare Hills riots. You had the Manchester airport incident as well. Like, this didn't all just happen in a vacuum. There had been a number of factors that had been building up to this. And of course, decades of perception of the media lying, of the government lying. And then on the Wednesday night, basically the whole thing erupted. And what happened was people in Southport went to a local mosque. Now, what I had said on the show, and again, it's all documented, I said, well, why are people out protesting outside a mosque? I said, what has happened is a name has been put out, and I don't need to repeat the name, but I said, clearly this name is false, and clearly this has been put out to serve a specific purpose, which was, to antagonize already, fraught relations with the Muslim community in Britain, and that's what I said at the time. That this guy was named, and I thought it was wrong, and I didn't think that was him. That wasn't the information I'd heard. So anyway, that was the Wednesday, and then it really all started kicking off on the Friday. I did a show and I had a guest on, Mark Collett, and we both said that we wouldn't advise anybody to go out on the Saturday, that the police will be out, the police will be looking to provoke you, far left agitators will be out looking to provoke you, and that you should stay at home. And that was on the Saturday. And then obviously it kept rumbling on for a few more days, and I was doing shows, I was covering what was going on at night. And then on the Wednesday of last week, you had the big list of names that went out of the huge protest that were going to take place, which turns out was a hoax. Nick Lowles of Hope Not Hate said it was a hoax, that was put out, that information. The left, or the establishment, then mobilised the Socialist Workers' Party, etc., and they went out in numbers. And then really since that Wednesday, there's not been anything. It's all abated. Then you've had the plethora of cases against people and the attacks. And then I have found myself, caught up in this whirlwind that I fanned the flames of the riots, and that I was responsible because I named the individual, when I clearly named the individual in the context of the individual not being responsible. I mean, again, let me give you an example of this. This is like a newsreader talking about a murder case, and he said the lady's husband said the reason he beat her to death was because she deserved it. That's like the press then reporting the next day, newscaster says woman beat to death because she deserved it. Like he was quoting what. So what has happened is the British regime, who obviously don't like me, they don't like what we do at UNN, they don't like the work I've been doing, the people that they say I associate with, the people that I say I work with, and they've used this as an opportunity in the confusion, because there is a fog of war, to drag me into this. And this is very nefarious, and it's very wrong. And as I say to everyone, is this could happen to anybody the next time anything like this happens. And you look at what they've done over the last few years, and specifically in relation to alternative media, Richard D. Hall, and the way that they've gone after him. They are systematically going after everyone, Charles. And UK Column will be next. Iconic will be after that, everyone. And unless you're a card-carrying member of the National Union of Journalists, unless you're fully approved and fully vetted by Ofcom, they will not let alternative media broadcast if we keep going at this rate.
I think this is it. This is, absolutely the critical issue is that we have to consider this. I mean, obviously, the circumstances that you have had unfold before you are terrible, unfounded, and all the rest of it. Obviously, very purposeful. But exactly as you say, it could happen to anyone. And actually, what we've seen very much is that it doesn't, to be caught up in it or captured by this, you don't, in fact, need to be saying things in the public domain from a sort of journalistic point of view. I mean, we've seen many people simply commentating on social media with no necessary sort of journalistic background. So as you say, anybody could be a target. And I think that's the point that we want to get out here. What do you see as being the sort of the end state for the media that are pushing this, for the state that appear to be controlling the media in pushing this? Where do you think they want to take this with regard to censorship in particular?
Well, I mean, in an ideal world, they would shut down social media entirely, and you would just be stuck at home watching the BBC or ITV or Sky, and you'd be watching the approved titles. They simply do not want people having alternative sources of information, because if they do, people can then expose their scams and they can expose their lies. And we all have a track record over COVID. We have a track record of the war in Ukraine. We've got a track record over the conflict in Israel and Gaza. And they clearly don't like us because we provide a nuanced and balanced view. It's like, they say, well, they are conspiracy theorists. They're brainwashed. They say we're the ones that actually have a proper look at the situation and try and say, look, in every conflict, there's one side, there's another side, and there's other people, and this is some of the, and they hate that, because we're fundamentally doing at UNN and UK Column what the mainstream media used to do 15, 20 years ago. And I often talk about this. Like, you watch the media from 20 years ago. People like Tommy Robinson, Paul Golding, whatever you think of them, used to get on Newsnight. They used to get on Piers Morgan. Paul Golding was on the Andrew Neil show. You imagine the furore if someone who was even considered mildly far right was allowed on a daytime TV show. The conversation has moved so that anybody who is basically not in that, and I use these terms because they're simplistic, the centre-left metropolitan elite bubble, you are not allowed a voice. And it primarily extends to those on the right, but it also extends to those on the left as well, as you saw with the attacks on Jeremy Corbyn, with the attacks on certain aspects of the left and the Labour Party. But they are still a bit of a protected category, whereas it's open season on us.
Yeah, it does absolutely look that way. It is interesting because I would agree with you that on the face of it, it seems that to wipe out social media, to get rid of the what's become a different tier of media, like you say, people who are reporting, like you are at UNN, like UK Column are, to unpick what is actually happening and the rest of it. But you see, of course, in being able to demonize you, for example, and throw a millstone around your neck, what the press are able to do is hold up these people as exemplars to keep the population in check. And of course, so one thing that I think is very significant in this is the way that the Online Safety Act in particular is taking effect. And we see that section 179 and section 180, which are particularly putting out, section 179 being to put out content that you know is false. And in effect, this is sort of, trial by media. This is what the mainstream media are sort of suggesting that you've done, as you say, totally failing to pick up on the
but as I say, like, if I'm not sure about something, I would always caveat that and say, look, I don't know. I said, I do caveat because I'm honest with my followers. And the thing is, again, Charles, I've had loads of people email me and they say, I don't recognise who this person is that the media are talking about. They say, I've been watching you for years and we don't know who is this person they're making you out to be. If I don't know the answer to someone, like, take the Lucy Letby trial, Charles, that's now coming out, and I know UK Column was on this. I am still doubtful about Lucy Letby. I have my issues, and people at the time, my audience was crucifying me because I was actually saying that. I said I'm a bit sceptical of her. But what I did say was, look, there is clearly trial by media with Lucy Letby. There is clearly discrepancies in the case that has been put forward by the CPS. And from what I understand, it looked like the only option available that was the right one was a retrial. Whereas the media, hang her, flog her, this look at witch. Remember the headlines, and they accuse you of everything that they are. Whereas what I said was, as I said, I am not part of Lucy Letby's innocent, and that annoys a lot of my followers. I mean, I think there is a chance that she is innocent, but that is another one that's really going to blow up in the face of the CPS and the mainstream media, because the mainstream media crucified Lucy Letby, as did the CPS, and they've admitted there was flaws in the evidence against her. And the problem we have, Charles, is we're now dealing with people who are amateurish and exceptionally unintelligent. They don't see the bigger picture. And as I've said, the Home Office that put up a graphic that said 1,000 people have been arrested. They put in their comments, these criminals, etc., etc. You are innocent until proven guilty. These people are not criminals. You're only a criminal if you admit your guilt in a court, which sadly a lot of people are doing under severe duress and pressure, or a jury or a judge finds you guilty. Yet they were labelling people arrested as criminals, which is hundreds of years of legal tradition thrown out. And likewise, the separation between the press, the separation between the state and the judiciary, these checks and balances that are there for a reason have all been eroded, basically since March 2020, but it's accelerating now.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I think the analogy with the Lucy Letby case, I think, is a very good point to make, because there's and it totally does exactly what you're saying, which is a failure to address any sort of nuance. To say that the conviction might not be safe is not to say that she's innocent, and yet people can't understand that. And in the same way, what we were just talking about there with the Online Safety Act, for example, for a mainstream publication to put out something that they know to be false with the intent of causing harm, they may not be liable for committing an offence, because Section 80 specifically exempts them from it.
They are not held to the same rules and standards that we are. And it's this two-tier system that exists basically everywhere. It's clearly one rule for them. And again, the other example is, look at the media, the way they behave around wars. They push look at like Putin, the madman, this lunatic has lost his mind, etc. You and I, we were clearly pointing out that this has been going on since, the 1930s, and then the fall of the Soviet Union, then the 2014 Maidan revolution, the ongoing and again, any of us, the Putin apologists, look, we're just saying there's a bit of nuance here, and it's not black and white. And the thing is, as you say, they're allowed to push that information that then leads people to extreme war, and it's frightening.
It is. It absolutely is, and I think the other aspect to it, specifically where the media are concerned, I mean, it's very similar with the state, is the feeling that there's really no recourse. You know, you've now had a number of mainstream publications put out information about you that it either should not have been put in the public domain, or I think I'm right in saying is wholly inaccurate. But
Yep.
do you feel like you have any way of dealing with that, with responding to that?
I think there is a number of places. I think they even for their lies, they crossed the line, naming a family member, specifying the age of my child online. I've actually got 2 children, but I won't give the other age. But to do that was a breach even for them. It's a clear breach of IPSO codes, clear breach of right to privacy, Human Rights Act of 98, Data Protection Act 2018. So I think there is some legal recourse. I'm also looking into it as well. As I say, look, the media can say what they want about me. They can lie about me. I'm a very opinionated person, and that is what it is. But what they are actually doing is misrepresenting my words to try and criminalize what I have done, which is again is a step in a completely different direction, because I have not engaged in any criminality here, yet they are alluding to me engaging in criminality. And that's where when we get into the cases of what's happened to people who are currently being jailed, being put away for tweets, for social media posts, which, look, are quite spicy. I'm not going to deny that the stuff's spicy, but it is not criminal. And the problem with this Race Relations Act of 1986, and that's what it's based on, is did the individual have the intention to stir up racial hatred? And I'm sure you'll be aware of the Samelia case, where the judge clearly said that no criminality has taken place, but the jury has to decide whether he had the intention to stir up. So now they can say as well, and that is pure thought crime. Do we think this person was intending to stir up racial hatred? And what really bugs me the most is, where are the lawyers? Where are all the people that believe? They're silent, just like during COVID. All the surgeons, all the doctors who didn't speak out on what was going on when they removed the indemnity from the vaccine manufacturers, which we pointed out was unprecedented. They said there was no risks to these vaccines. We clearly pointed out that if you take a paracetamol, there is a risk, and it states that on the label. So the medical profession breached the Hippocratic Oath. The legal profession, I don't know. I don't know why so many people are just, well, maybe they see the punishment. People know the punishment if you go off the reservation and you start being a whistleblower. But we need, see, this is the other thing as well, Charles. We need reputable people to start speaking out. We need people who are doctors, professors, lawyers, people of standing, who are remaining silent, because they need to stand up for what is right and realise they will be targeted next. Who the state is going to come after will keep shrinking and shrinking until it's you or them.
Yeah, I think that's such a strong message, a really important one, that people do absolutely need to speak out, and like you say, everybody feeling this, acknowledging this, needs to speak out, regardless of their position or profession. But as you say, specifically people who are in more prominent positions, who are in the public eye, should absolutely be speaking out about it. Of course, they absolutely should.
The horror stating that you are innocent until proven guilty, the horror that people should not be tried by the media, the horror that the state does not have the right to go around and compromise people getting a free. I mean, this is basic stuff that I, as a layman, know about, that these are clear breaches of the law. That the state should go out of its way to make sure everybody, regardless of the crime, has a free and fair trial. And another example is, you had Wes Streeting, the health secretary. He came out the other week and said, well, if people are racist, They shouldn't be treated on the NHS. Every single doctor and nurse, or was doctor, sorry, should have come out and said, that is a breach of the Hippocratic Oath. You have to treat everybody if they are sick or ill, regardless of their... So what do they start doing? Do they start saying, well, we're not going to treat this guy because of who he is? That's the rule. You can't break these rules, because once you go down that path, when does it end? You don't treat people in hospital because you don't like their political views. You don't treat them because they're unvaccinated. I mean, it's all these things that took hundreds of years to get into place, born out of the Enlightenment, over the last 5 years have just been ripped asunder.
Yeah, they have. No, I mean, I think it's exactly right. You know, it's most obviously seen, I think, in the medical profession, where the sense of division has been absolutely extraordinary over the last few years. But it is seen everywhere in employment. You know, people being given certain positions due to this, that, and the other factor, which of course should have nothing to do with employability. And again, I think the other thing, you know, just going back to people speaking out, and indeed having people within the sort of commentary sphere who are pilloried and demonized. You know, it's very interesting now to see such a clear line being drawn between people who are speaking out and are therefore labeled as conspiracy theorists, and then they are seen to be having, you know, a certain ideology which makes them on the far right and therefore an extremist. And then we're getting very close to suggesting that people, just for thinking something, are actually terrorists. I mean, it's very, very dangerous. But you can plot now a very clear line between, you know, point A and terrorism.
But I think all of this is born out of fear, though, Charles, because if they were confident and they were secure about themselves, they could have handled this in a completely different manner. They are clearly panicking. They are clearly rattled. Starmer is totally out of his depth. The civil service are totally out of their depth as well. The way they are behaving is like basically this. If you allowed the student Communist Party or like the student Trotskyite Society to run the country, that's what you've got. And you know, in terms of, people say to me, well, Clews, what are your politics? What do you believe? What I would argue is I want to see this country return to, you know, the normality we maybe had 40 or 50 years ago, and the mean position of most European countries. What we are witnessing right now is an aberration in history. These are clearly not British values that this government are acting upon, and they are basically at war with their own citizens.
Yeah.
Which
well, this is it. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
We were told that's what they do in North Korea, that's what they do in China. And see, the thing is as well, I'm pointing this out to people about China. In China, people know the rules. They know the score. If you do this, this is what's going to happen to you. The reason they do it is because they say, well, China's 1.5 billion people. We need some form of control. So most people are like, right, fine. Nobody knows the rules. Oh, am I allowed to say this today, or am I? At least if we knew the rules, it might be a different story. But what they're saying is, well, we're a free nation. This is a democracy. But on the other hand, we're going to behave like a tyranny. Well, can you just admit you're a tyranny then, and we'll act accordingly?
Yeah, no, I think that's it. And sadly, because of the way in which it's being conducted, and there's obviously, you know, the ludicrous background to any of these actions of the state, whether it be to shut people in their homes or to lock them up in prison or you know, whatever it is. Unfortunately, an enormous majority of people will fall for the rhetoric that is supposed to underpin the action. Now, as you say, it seems to have been born of fear, and I think, in actual fact, that rather than push people back into corners, it will galvanize them and it will strengthen their resolve. And I mean, you know, you have sort of taken something of a hammering on this. How do you feel on that score, both personally but also in the wider sense? How do you think people are going to respond to all this?
Well, I'm not going to lie on a personal level that it doesn't hit you in certain ways. Just to be clearly lied about and to have your family involved, that is, you know, it's horrible. But again, you have to look at the bigger picture. And it was funny, I was having a conversation with someone, they said, well, why don't you just chuck it? Why don't you just move on? I said, well, I do believe in principles, things like free speech, individual liberty, the ability to discuss these things. Like even if I was the dictator, the all-powerful dictator of Britain, I mean, would you be behaving like this, just locking people away and ruining their lives? It's totally counterproductive by the state and the way they're behaving. And the thing is, it's not just on this, Charles, that Labour are making a massive. Look at what they did with the winter fuel payment. Look at what they're doing with the trains. They basically said to ASLEF, fine, we'll accept your deal. And all the other unions are now jumping on board. They gave the junior doctors a massive pay rise. You've got the asylum cases still costing a fortune. And then you've had VAT on private schools as well, which halfway through the year, loads of people are turning around and they're saying, what's this all about? So they are actively going out of their way to create massive blocks who hate them from many different perspectives. And the only block that they can rely on now is the sort of public sector aristocracy. And there was an interesting graphic out about who votes Labour, and like 40% plus of the vote are for people earning 70k plus. These will all be people in very well paid public sector or woke state corporations. But that number of people maybe amounts to what, 5-6 million? So you're looking at a stage where Labour will see their support continue to plummet from an already low level. Starmer's approval rating will keep going down. And within 6 months, you're going to have a major legitimacy crisis about this government. And what are people going to turn back to the Tories? The Tories are a spent force as well. So the ruling elites of this country have a disaster awaiting them. And do you know what? I couldn't be happier. It serves them right. And then you've got all the inter-ethnic conflicts that are there and potentially going to erupt as well. The mess that they've made of this country over the last 30 years, and the money printing, the fiscal irresponsibility, there is going to be a day of reckoning, and we'll need to just wait and see how it all plays out.
We will indeed, and I think we'll probably have to draw to a close there. I mean, as a final note, I think to somebody I was speaking to yesterday, I think encapsulated a lot of what we and the audience will be feeling. And it wasn't said in despair, but he simply said, "I just want to be left alone." and I thought that was pretty much bang on. But David Clews, thank you very much indeed for speaking to me. And there will be some notes posted below this at ukcolumn.org. But do keep in touch, David. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.